What is going on, eaters and feeders and everybody else? But I guess that's everybody because everyone's an eater. Some people are feeders. But in any case, this little live stream, quick little jump on, isn't really directly related to the meal prep business or business in general, not directly related to any of that. But I do think it's foundational. For those of you who have been following me for a while, probably used to me liking to you're used to the fact that I like to jump on, get live every once in a while, and wax philosophical about philosophy. That seemed kind of redundant. In any case, this was something that I'm listening to. And again, if you have been following me, you know I like to listen to books constantly. I'm always listening to podcasts or books. Quick suggestion: if it's something you're trying to learn, if it's a book and you're trying to learn the information from it, get it on Audible. Listen to it over and over. That's what I like to do. I'll put a link to my Audible and maybe even some books that I like. I'm signed up to be like an affiliate for them. So maybe I'll get some kickback. I don't know, maybe a couple of cents, maybe a free book. That would be awesome. I'd really appreciate that. So if there's an Audible link, probably won't be, obviously when I'm going live, but when I get my act together, I'll put an Audible link down there. So quick plug for Audible, even though Jeff Bezos is going to be running our lives and controlling our futures in the not too distant future. But until then, I invite you to listen to the things that get it in Audible in an audio format. That way you can not only listen to it passively, but you can also listen to it over and over. There's books that I've read once. There's only a handful of books that I've read multiple times, but there's books like The 4-Hour Workweek. I've probably listened to it over 20 times. And yeah, I don't retain everything every time, but when you read a book, you don't retain everything every time. So if it's philosophy, if it's just anything that you're trying to learn and you want to really saturate your brain with, I suggest going through the audio format. It just makes it easier. So I'm listening to it while I'm working out, doing my cardio, and even with my ear pods, I was able to take it into the sauna. And the book I was listening to was Abraham Hicks. If you're not familiar with Abraham Hicks, I'm not going to go into too much detail other than if you're into philosophy, Eckhart Tolle, Buddhism, any kind of spirituality, I suggest you get into Abraham Hicks. I wish I discovered Abraham Hicks sooner. It was actually something that was suggested to me by my father, and I didn't know what it was. He didn't really explain what it was, and it probably took me over a year, at least a year and a half, maybe 2.5 years, depending on when he gave it to me. It was a book either for my birthday or Christmas. I'm a November baby, so my gifts are always like together. It was a book. I put it in my desk drawer at work, and it wasn't until I was cleaning it out, I found it at the right time, and I had the foundational knowledge of Eckhart Tolle and Buddhism and a lot of other philosophy that I like to get into. But those are some of the most influential ones. The other ones kind of are in between, but I'd say Eckhart Tolle, Buddhism, and then Abraham Hicks are probably the three most influential marks along my philosophical journey. And I won't go into exactly the principles of Abraham Hicks other than if you're familiar with the law of attraction. I'll put that in as a fourth one. The law of attraction was also The Secret, I should say specifically. The Secret with Rhonda Byrne is actually based on Abraham Hicks philosophy, study, information, whatever you want to call it. And Jerry Hicks and Esther Hicks are the two. It's a husband and wife duo. I believe Jerry Hicks died in like 2007, but they're the duo behind Abraham Hicks. I'm not going to explain who or what Abraham is, but Rhonda Byrne, who is the person behind The Secret, which was a movie first and then it became a book. A lot of people are confused about that. She shot that movie. I believe it was originally supposed to be a TV series, and then she condensed it to a movie at an Abraham Hicks event. So a lot of those principles, the law of attraction, which a lot of people are familiar with, that's where the law of attraction, as far as they didn't invent the law of attraction, that's something that wasn't invented. That's something that exists. It's a principle of this crazy reality we have. So they didn't invent it. there's a lot of other people who discuss it, but a lot of people came to the law of attraction principles through Rhonda Byrne's work, The Secret. And to tie that back into what I was saying before, that was literally based upon and done in part of or along with Abraham Hicks. They had Esther Hicks and Jerry Hicks. They had a contractual agreement to do that kind of production and help distribute and get this information out there. Because the more people who know this stuff, the better. If everybody practiced philosophy or studied philosophy and practiced these kind of things, the world would be a better place. Because at the end of the day, I believe everybody, even people that are seen as evil or bad, and whoever you want to put in your mind, whether it's a politician or Hitler or Mao or whoever, at the end of the day, I believe that all of those people were trying to find happiness. Now, the way they went about it was not correct, but it's probably because they don't have these principles. They didn't have these tools, and they didn't understand how to do it. There's a lot of people who pursue happiness through money and tangible items and accolades and success and all this stuff that is a product of our material world. And we all know that money and all these other things don't make you happy. There's a lot of people who have tons of Emmys and trophies and rings and huge bank accounts and jets and Lambos and everything else, and doesn't guarantee happiness. So I think that's very important. If you're not on that journey, please get on that journey. Do it for yourself. Do it for all of us. And in any case, I was listening to one of the books. I've got several of the Abraham Hicks books on Audible, and the newest one that I got isn't their newest book. It's just the most recent one that I've received, that I got for myself. And one of the things that this book is Ask and It Shall Be Given, I believe. It's from, I think I have the hard copy version of it as well. But I was listening to my Audible, and one of the many things, and there's so much profound information that they discuss in these books, but one of them was the fact that there's only two emotions. There's only two emotional states, positive or negative. Now, we've got these names for all these other emotional states, and it's not to say that they don't exist, but if you imagine, it's actually a spectrum. And rage and anger and resentment and revenge and contempt, those are on one side of the spectrum, and they seem like they're different emotions, but that's really just because as humans, we've decided to make them different emotions. But if you really distill it down and simplify everything, there's really two emotions. You're either happy, you're either positive or negative. And we know what side rage and anger and all those negative ones fit on. They fit on the negative side of the spectrum. And there's joy and excitement and expectation. And, you know, expectation and excitement are like on the opposite end of the spectrum. And then they're kind of matched. Their mirrored counterpart on the negative end would be, you know, expectation and excitement. What's the opposite of that? Anxiety. You know, so there's depression and things like that are on the negative side. Then you've got joy and bliss and peacefulness and all these other things on the opposite side, and the positive side, I should say. And the discussion, it went into some really, like I said, profound stuff that really kind of clicked with me. And I really just wanted to hurry up and share it. I haven't written out a script. I'm just going off the top of my head. And this is from something I was listening to several hours ago. I'm actually getting ready to shoot some more episodes. I've been trying to be more organized with writing and bulleting things out and planning and trying to truncate my filming. So we'll see how that goes. So I sat down to do that stuff. I still had this kicking around in my head. I really wanted to share it. There's nobody else in this apartment. My beautiful fiance is at work, and I want to share it with my friends, but it's kind of like out of the blue, out of context, to just start texting them. So instead, I'm sharing it with my friends, family, and loved ones who I might not even know, but I extend my love to you, and I want to share this with you. And considering that spectrum, one thing that they were discussing is, and I forget what's at the extreme ends of it, but the extreme ends of the positive side would be things like peace and bliss and joy and things like that. And then obviously towards the middle, somewhere around the middle, there's like complacency And then boredom starts getting into the negative side, because boredom obviously, while it's not as negative as rage, boredom starts getting you closer there. And the further you go on these ends of this spectrum, the more intense these emotions are, the deeper they get into us, the harder it is for us to dismiss them and go on throughout our day, especially the negative stuff that seems to hold on to you. Like, you get on the far end of the negative spectrum, and you're going to have like rage and revenge and those things that I'm sure we all know people, hopefully no one close to you, but unfortunately there might be someone who's close to you and you know intimately that they have an incident that happened maybe years or decades ago, and it's burnt, or a scar of resentment. That scar is not even a good term for it, because a scar is something that's permanent and it's not a choice. They hold on to this resentment. They hold on to this sense of revenge, or this, a lot of time, rage kind of calms down with time, but they hold on to something that it's hard for them to let go. Now, it might just ruin your day. It might ruin your week. It might ruin your life if it's something that's very deep. And not to say that it's not something that is, we'll say, justified, but at the end of the day, it's something that on the deepest of levels, if we're being truthful, that person, maybe it's you, chooses to hold on to these things. And when there are these negative things, unfortunately, it seems like the negative stuff sticks a lot more easily. Even though we don't want it, we start to identify with it. We hold on to it. We have to hold on to it because, I mean, for us to feel it, it has to be justified. Our ego then has to justify it and identify with it. And whether we're the victim or somehow we are wronged, it kind of reinforces that. And at the end of the day, it just makes us hold on to it longer. Now, one of the things that they were discussing, or Jerry was narrating this section, but there's stuff that is kind of a collaborative. I'm not going to get into that, but this information, Jerry's narrating the book, and one of the things that he's discussing is the fact that figuring out where you are on the spectrum helps you figure out how to get to where you want. Nobody wants to be, as much as we might identify with and we feel vindicated for holding on to this resentment or whatever it is on this negative end. And like I said, we could build an identity around that. That becomes part of the story that we tell ourselves. And we have to hold on to this because there's some kind of, there's some kind of justice in holding on to it, even though it's not really affecting the external world. It's affecting our internal world, which by then affects our external world negatively. And there's a Buddhist story and proverb about holding on to a coal, and I think it was a warrior or something, the original story, and you're probably familiar with this because it's turned into a saying, but and there's a couple of different versions, but there's some story about a warrior who was holding on to a burning ember or a coal, waiting for a warrior who he had resentment and wanted some revenge on, and sat there holding on to it. There's different versions. One it's holding in his hand, the other one it's in his coat pocket, waiting. And in any case, it either burns his hand in one end of the story, or it sets him on fire by it's sitting there in his pocket, waiting for this guy to come by, waiting to throw it at him. He's just waiting and holding on to this coal. And there's another version where it says, it's something to the likes of holding on to resentment or holding on to anger against somebody is like taking poison and expecting it to hurt them. It's like holding on to a coal and hurting yourself, waiting to get that revenge on them. It's like putting it in your pocket and only setting yourself on a blaze, waiting to exact that revenge. So in any case, you figure out where you are on the negative end of the spectrum. And it's very important for, no matter what's happening to you, to understand that negative feelings make you feel bad. It compromises you. It compromises your vision. You focus on that negative thing. When you're focusing on positive things, like I've been trying to, and I have another video about this, where I try to find blessings throughout my day, even little things. Even if you catch 5 red lights and you catch 1 green light, catching that green light is that little blessing. And if you start focusing on those little blessings, finding a little, heads up penny, things like that, You focus on those little blessings, it's easier to see other blessings. Whereas if you focus on a negative thing, not only are you blinded, you can't see those blessings, the things that are going for you, the things that you should be grateful for, your ability to walk and think and talk and have friends and family and a roof over your head, or all these things that you have, you don't see them. You take them for granted, and you don't show that appreciation. You don't have that gratitude, and it just further eats away. And the only things that you can focus on are other negative things. So you're either replaying that echo of negative stuff, or then if it's not that echo, then the only other stuff you seem to have a vision for are the other things that are going right, the other injustices that you're suffering, all the red lights. You could have 10 green lights in your trip, and you get that one red light, and you're like, of course a red light when I want to be here. I'm stuck here because of this red light. It's not fair. It's not fair, So you find out where you are on the spectrum, and your goal should always be to be on the positive side. And then once you're on the positive side, ideally you climb your way up to the extreme of the positive side, where you're experiencing joy and gratitude and excitement for life and all these positive things. But by finding yourself on that spectrum, on the negative side, you don't have to make the jump right to joy. It's very hard to do that. And people who do try to do that, they try to, be a yogi in a day. It's not going to happen. And if anything, you'll feel more discouraged by trying to make that jump and failing, not being able to sustain that place. And, even stories in Buddhism talk about how the Buddha is just a normal person. Buddhism isn't a religion. It's a philosophy. A lot of people confuse that. Even Buddha says it's not a religion. It's a philosophy. And Buddha was just a normal guy. He wasn't a god or anything else like that. Even after reaching enlightenment, he didn't stay enlightened. He wasn't without sorrow. When it talks about him losing a friend died, and he still went through grief. And that's part of it, is you're not going to find yourself at joy and permanently be in joy. Life is meant to be challenging, and you're meant to have these adversities and these challenges and these obstacles, and you're meant to overcome them, but always seek to try to spend as much time on the positive side of the spectrum. Finding yourself on the negative end of the spectrum and trying to make that jump, like I said, it's not sustaining. But what you do is you find something that's a little bit further upstream that allows you to get to the positive side. So you can go from revenge. And what's at the foundation of revenge? Anger, maybe rage, but let's say anger, because rage is normally like a short-term thing, normally fizzles out into anger and resentment. And you go from the revenge to the anger, and you go from the anger to the disappointment or the feeling of betrayal, and you eventually work your way down from that hot end of the spectrum. And even if you're trying to counsel somebody, you figure out where they are approximately on that spectrum, and don't expect them to just put a smile on and go right to being blissful and happy and at peace with the world. You talk them down. And in some cases, anger is a better place to get them than revenge. Feeling betrayed, or feeling abandoned, or feeling it's still negative emotional states can be better than the other end of the spectrum, wherever that person is. So it's about working yourself and that person down the spectrum to eventually the middle, where you have the really dull things like boredom and complacency. But if you're able to work yourself down from fear and anger and rage and resentment and revenge and all these super deep, heavy negative emotions that are at that far end of the spectrum, and work it down till you get to, like, I think the spectrum that he mentions in the book is like, let's say 1 through 20, where 10's like right there in the middle. 10, 9, 10, 11, right there in the middle. That's where you're going to find boredoms, maybe an 11, complacencies, maybe, a 10. And then you start getting into 9, you start getting into 8, and you start getting to, if 1 is bliss and peace and joy and excitement and all those those positive emotions, you just have to get closer and closer, and you make that incremental progress. It's a process. It takes a long time. And like I said, you're going to go over this throughout your life because there are going to be things that upset you. But if you have the ability to recognize that in yourself, recognize it in others, a lot of times when you start, I know for me, when I start learning different philosophical principles, I would look for it in myself, but I normally started identifying in other people first, because you have that perspective of watching it instead of being in it. You're not in the scene, you're watching the scene. So you're like, oh, that person is experiencing this emotion. They're experiencing this emotion because of this. And they're refusing to let go of this because they feel justified in holding on to it or whatever else. If this person was just able to let go of that, there's nothing in between them being able to go from here to here to here to here to eventually putting a smile on their face and going about their day. When you move forward with love and positivity, the world responds a lot better. Now, it might not be the same day, but if you're consistently that way, your environment in the world, the reality responds that way. And this goes back to the law of attraction kind of stuff. But I thought that spectrum, the concept of the spectrum, and really distilling it down to, as much as I don't like to polarize things in life, I don't think there's good and bad people. I think we're all a mixture. I don't necessarily want to say it's like a zero sum kind of thing, but I think that from a perspective that is hard for us to see as human beings, it's all as it should be. The good things and the bad things happen. You know, there's I have one story that I really like. It's a Buddhist story, and I think I mentioned it before. Really quick, farmer has a horse. Horse gets out of the stable. The neighbor says, "Oh, what a tragedy! Your horse ran away." And the farmer says, "We shall see." Next day, the horse comes back with 2 other wild horses, walks right into the pen, right as the farmer's fixing the pen, and locks him up. And now he's got 3 horses. And the neighbor says, "Wow, you've got 3 horses now. How fortunate." Farmer says, "We shall see." Farmer's son is trying to break in the new horses and get them, trained on the saddle, gets kicked off, breaks his leg. Neighbor says, "Oh, what a tragedy. Your son broke his leg trying to tame those horses." Farmer says, "We shall see." Next day, the military comes in and says, we're going to war, and we're recruiting all men, all boys over this age to join us in the war. No option. We're taking them with him. Sees that the son has a broken leg and says, "Well, can't take this dude. He's got a broken leg." Neighbor comes over, goes, "Oh, how lucky your son's broken leg kept him from getting drafted into the war where he's going to meet certain death." The farmer says, "We shall see." So I look at things in life like that, the negative and the positive. If you're able to look at it as, while this might be negative on the short term, this one incident might be perceived as negative. 6 months from now, you might look back and be like, man, the best thing that ever happened to me was getting that flat tire and then getting a ride from that one person. That person ended up, who knows, they got you a job of your dream or something, the job of your dreams or something like that, or introduce you to the love of your life or XYZ. There's all these little chance circumstances where if you look back in life, I've got deep friendships that I've had because, I was forgotten at a concert and 2 cars went. Car A thought I was driving back in car B. Car B thought I had a ride back in car A. I ended up being alone at the concert because I got, sidetracked talking to somebody else. And that friend was like, "Oh, well, I'm headed north, but my buddy's headed south." Chatting up with that guy on the way south. Ended up being a great friend to this day. Dave, if you're watching this on the off chance that you watch my meal prep stuff, what's up, Dave? Thank you for the ride again. And it was great meeting you that way. And that's over 10 years ago. So what turned out to be a bad situation where I'm left high and dry on the other end of the county with my friends already like, well, man, I'm already down here and I'm not okay to drive and all this other stuff. It ended up being a great thing. Now, what if I missed, I'm not going to go in that route. I was going to say, what if one of the cars got in an accident? I guess I kind of went that route. But what if, those things happen? There's been flights, I'm sure, the 9/11 flights or any flight that's gone down. Someone missed that flight. and it seemed they were probably riddled with anxiety, rushing to the airport. Oh, I'm going to miss the flight, and then I won't make it to this meeting. My boss is going to kill me. Ending up missing that flight is the best thing that ever happened. But in any case, why does my nose always get itchy when I go live? I get such an itchy nose when I go live. I don't know what it is. I'm allergic to going live. In any case, recognize where you are on the spectrum and always work your way to the most positive side. We're fully capable of being in a blissful state 24 hours a day, every single waking moment. It is possible. You can't convince me that it's not possible. Deciding to be blissful might not be an easy thing, but working at it and continually trying to return to it despite what comes up, that's the work of life. I mean, what else are we striving for? Why else are you trying to work hard? Why else are you trying to, everything you do in life, if you look at the core motivation, it's to be happy, right? People go to school, you study really hard in high school and well, some people do. I didn't. In theory, you study really hard in high school so you can go to a good college. You study really hard and go to a challenging college so that you can get a good job. You get that good job and you work really hard so you could buy nice things and marry the right person. None of that stuff guarantees happiness. And the sham of it all is we could be happy in this moment. You don't need the money or the car or the accolades or the life partner or the house, or you don't need any of that to be happy. You could be happy now. And the thing with the law of attraction, especially the way that Abraham Hicks information really stresses it, is the key is being in the state of mind that you wish to be in, that you think like, oh, I'm going to get money and then I'll be happy. Be happy now. And then it's easier to get the money. And then you also don't need the money. Money is something that does make your life easier because it's able to, limit the amount of anxiety and stress that you have, because you're able to control more things in this, material world that is based largely upon money, but it doesn't guarantee happiness. What does guarantee happiness is you making the commitment to work your way to that side of the spectrum. And I had this when I was meditating the other, a few weeks ago now. And in previous videos, I've mentioned how my recent meditations this year, I get to this state of what I call bliss, where I just have laughter fits, where I just start giggling. And a lot of it was with breath work and holding my breath out, and you get this panic that comes on. And then it all started with when I had that gasp of breath in, I had this voice in my head that was like, you were able to do that this entire time. You were the one preventing yourself from breathing. You had full control over that, yet your body started getting into this panic mode. It overrode logic and was like, oh my God, we're going to die. Bells are going off. What happens if we don't get another breath? You're in full control over that. I wasn't 50 feet underwater out of breath. I was holding my breath out. And all it took was, and then you have that immediate elation, that immediate relief. You're capable of that at all times. You're also capable of putting yourself in a miserable state at all times. People understand depression. It seems like it's more accepted in society now to be depressed than it is to be happy. Isn't that weird? Like if someone was depressed, we understand, oh, you could be depressed for like no reason. Like you understand that there might be some guy who has a Lamborghini and a mansion and millions of dollars, and he might still be depressed. Like we understand that, we accept that. But if there was some guy on the street who was smiling and didn't have, he's holding a sign begging for food and he's smiling or just laughing, what would we say? He must be crazy, right? Isn't that weird? Isn't that somewhat sick that our society has this condition to be like, well, it's more understandable to be miserable with all of the trappings of success than it is to be happy with none of them. So coming up on 30 minutes, that's where I'm going to leave it. Find out where you are on the spectrum, find a way to get yourself incrementally closer to where you want to be. You never want to be on the negative side. I don't care who did what to you, how robbed you feel. I know it's all relative, but you're only doing yourself a disservice. Let go of the coal. Get yourself to a better place.